Hello, and welcome to the Rollwise Show, the show where we talk about most things tabletop RPG related. Today, we're going to be doing a little bit of a debrief on our Journey into the Magical Land of Yeld second edition, where we talk a little bit about our gameplay, what we experienced, what we read, and our overall thoughts. But before we begin, I think I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview as to what Yeld is. So if this is people's first jaunt into it, they at least know a little bit about the game we're talking about, and then we'll kind of dive right into it. So first and foremost, Yeld was created by Nick Smith and Jake Ridgmond, and it is a kind of an all-age RPG where people play as friends who have gone from our world into the magical land of Yeld, usually through some sort of magical doorway, Chronicle of Narnia-esque. The friends themselves are typically aged between 7 and 12, and once there, they explore the magical world, take on heroic jobs like freelancer or soul thief, and they gain magical powers as they explore. The game itself is kind of an emphasis on teamwork, storytelling, tactical combat, and all those kind of things. But what makes it different is that it does really try to help that collaborative storytelling thing, and it does suggest that everybody take a turn as the game master. The world itself is fairly quirky, having monsters that are definitely different than your standard Tolkien-esque RPG tropes, and gets pretty interesting when you dive into the lore. So yeah, that's our beginning. We were, of course, given a copy by the creators to test out and give our thoughts and everything like that. And so that's just what we're going to do. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Hopefully that's not ominous. This is pretty lighthearted. So kind of when we got the PDF and everything like that, what were your guys' explorations going into the magical land of Yeld? What did you guys think?
I'm always a little bit hesitant on a game that plays where player characters are so young. But I think it was presented pretty well, so I didn't have very many expectations beyond a little bit of a concern for that.
Okay. Is it because I mean, personally, I don't play a lot of games where I play as kids, and I don't know why. I never really got in like Kids on Bikes or Kids on Brooms or Tales from the Loop or anything like that. But is it just not I guess is that same thing for you, just not a game you typically drawn to?
No, I mean, it's just, I don't know. It just gets a little weird when you're playing kids, when you go from some of the other games that you've played. The transition's a little weird because, subject matter can be a little bit more uncomfortable when it's children, I feel. Gotcha. Especially in related nature to things that comes up in role-playing games like violence and horror themes, body horror, and things like that. A lot of that stuff happens in role-playing games, and that happening to kids can be triggering, let's say.
Gotcha. All right. What about you, Jeff? What were your expectations going in?
I think I was a little mixed. I wanted to learn more, because just reading the book sometimes doesn't give you everything, that you're going to get out of playing, actually, doing it and using the system and seeing how it is. Mm-hmm. For the most part, it seemed kind of fantasy. I had some of Brent's concerns. I had some reservations about playing kids so young, where I figured at some point we might kill something. The main bad guy's a vampire. There are some adult themes mixed in with child player characters, and I don't want to harp on that. I think we all agree that that's what the game is, and you don't have to go super dark with it. The game master doesn't have to go super dark with it. So there is some interesting choices. It's harder for me to put my head to try to get into the mindset of somebody that age. I mean, I raised 2 kids, but it's been a much longer time since I was that age. You know what I mean? Like, So I was a little concerned about, being able to, get into the headspace of the character. Because that's something that I kind of like to do, I'm not a method actor or anything, but I'm not running around like a 10-year-old. But
the role and role play.
But while we're playing, I want to try to do things that are not somebody who's got more life experience as I wanted to be with, the wonder of somebody younger without that life experience. And I found that to be a little challenging for me personally.
Sure. Yeah. I have to say, when I was looking through it, I was my expectations were non-existent, really, because honestly I'd never heard of the game until we had started looking at it. But I do like comic book art, and I really kind of thought the art in it was pretty cool. So I was like, oh, let's give this a whirl. Now, I know not very deep or anything like that, but truth be told,
the art is nice. The art is nice. The art is nice.
I liked the comic insertion into the book. I actually thought that was one of the cooler production things I've seen in a book in a while. And I thought it also, not only was it in there, but it was well done. Like, it helped me understand some of the rules, some of the tones. So I really like that part.
Yeah. Cause and truthfully, when you got to like the skill checks, there was obvious, like when you got to certain rules and everything like that, there were definitely the rules that were printed out on the page. But for whatever reason, my brain reads a comic book, all of a sudden they start making more sense to me. And I don't know why that is, but the way the combat was explained, the way the skills were explained, every one of those pages where there was a comic book like addition to it, really helped hammer how the rules themselves play out. Even though there were simple explanations and all that stuff, I found it to be very, very helpful in my total understanding of it. And now, and kind of in the tone or anything like that, did the tone or aesthetic of the game kind of surprise you when you started learning more about Yeld? Or did you kind of, because I was thinking it would just be kind of like another typical fantasy game, and I wasn't sure how it would be different than your typical fantasy games, but I was just curious what your guys' impressions were there.
I found it, I thought it was a fairly typical fantasy game when I read it. There is some neat stuff that they input in the lore that I guess is a little different, but it's pretty normal fantasy, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought it was going to be a typical, more typical fantasy game, but I actually felt the tone was a little lighter than I thought it might have been, that I feared it would be. I do like, the skills that they had and how they were named, and that kind of helped get me into that 7 to 12-year-old headspace a little bit, because they were kind of like funner type names. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I thought it wound up playing a little bit lighter than I feared, I guess.
Okay. But and you're probably right. The DM is going to choose the amount of choose the tone. Because obviously, the argument has been the argument goes around the internet every so often where some people say like, well, how much role playing, ROLE versus ROLL type playing that happens is that, people say, well, you don't need a lot of mechanics to role play ROLE. You just need imagination and everything like that. Whereas if you want to role play, you need a few more mechanics and everything. So, speaking of mechanics and everything like that, and kind of let's talk about like how you guys built your characters and everything like that. First of all, the friends themselves. So when everybody first gets to Yeld, you basically are choosing a friend type. Brent, you'd mentioned you had looked at the friend types, and what did you say it was? You didn't see any normal friends, or what was the quote you said there?
Well, no, all of the kids are semi-negative stereotypes, except for the big brother, the protective one. Like, you have the brat, and you have the know-it-all, and you have the liar, and they're kid archetypes, but it's weird that they're presented in sort of a negative way. Like when you think of a know-it-all or a liar or a bully, when you think of those archetypes, they're not positive, so it's hard. So the kids start out, it's a weird perspective, in my opinion, to start out with kids, as they're all kind of not great kids, it doesn't seem like.
Well, I'm a parent of a child who's currently going through stuff. No, just kidding.
Yeah, I didn't take it nearly as negatively as Brent did. I understand, like let's just throw it out there. The term bully, right, especially has a really negative connotation. But I think you see all of those archetypes in most larger friend groups. I think you even see it in smaller friend groups. Kids have pretty extreme behavior. I'm not a child psychologist, but like I said, I did raise 2 children. You do see a lot of those behaviors, even amongst kids who love and trust each other. There will be some bullying. There will be some, know-it-all, like you don't know anything, I know everything. You will have somebody lying for God knows what reason because they're not getting anything out of it. I thought the tropes actually were kind of real. You know what I mean? Like I thought they're appropriate. Maybe they could have found names that
I think my
felt
point
a little
is,
less negative,
I
but
think
I didn't take it the same way Brent did.
I think the point I'm trying to make is the kids are distilled down to one negative concept, one negative archetype in the game. They're not mixed characters. They're one kid is a know-it-all, one kid is a bully. It's not they're a bully sometimes, but they're protective of their little brother. It's not that. It's they're just a bully, or they're just
I mean, I played the liar, and I didn't lie all the time, and I didn't feel that the book told me I had to lie all the time. It was just something that, like, when the kid was put under stress, he would make stuff up to make himself look better, is how I took it.
Yeah, the just remember. Is that what you're kind of referencing there?
Yeah. I mean, that's how I took it, but I don't want to, bog down the video. Obviously Brent felt one way, I felt another.
Yeah, I mean, it's open for interpretation.
Yeah.
It was just like the feeling that I got in reading the archetypes. They seemed, I don't know, just more focused on negative behaviors, which might be a point, which also might be the point as to how the characters grow in Yeld, past just being those sorts of archetypes.
Yeah,
which is kind of a neat thought, but it just struck me as weird when I was first reading it.
Sure. Okay. Well, that's fair. Because I was, I think you're right. But then again, I was thinking about like, well, what kid stereotypes do you have? And not to say that my kid is going through a ton of stuff, but that, you kind of, as they grow and they learn about emotions and they kind of like have a hard time managing their feelings and doing all that stuff. It's crazy time. And as Jeff had said earlier, I don't really know if I can get into the headspace of a 7 to 12-year-old personally right now. I'm going to have to wait to live through that in a few years. I know it's been a minute for Jeff and all those things, but I wasn't really sure what other archetypes I could introduce that would be, interesting from that perspective. But to speak about kind of the growth that they have in Yeld and everything, they did have jobs too. And I thought the jobs were kind of a nice addendum to it. And as you if you've already played games like Final Fantasy or anything like that, you could have a feel almost like intrinsic as to how the jobs would operate, simply because it sounds like a lot of the jobs were similar to stuff you've already seen in other fantasy stuff: white mages, black mages,
red mages,
witch hunters, red mages, and all those kind of things, freelancers, soul thief. And I think that the nice things that they did is they gave you kind of the persona based on how you looked, and of course the special dice and everything that you got. But what you guys actually got to play the freelancer and the soul thief. How did you like them? Do you like how the concepts played out, how they worked mechanically? How did they feel?
You want to go ahead?
I actually had more problems with the jobs than I did the character archetype, the friend archetypes. I thought some of them skewed a little darker. Like, was it the red mage that ran around setting everything on fire? Was that the black mage?
That was the witch.
The witch hunter.
The witch hunter set everybody on fire. The soul thief, who's
straight murderer.
Text was, I cannot be afraid to kill, or something like that. And I get you're killing monsters, but I like, my character is the soul thief. I really felt like most of my skills, and this is probably a problem of me not having played the system, but like any challenges that came up, if they weren't combat related, I had 0 ways to solve them. Like all of my skills had to do with attacks and defense, and I didn't find the class to be maybe as well rounded as I thought. It kind of fit in with the archetype that I kind of had going into my head. But I think if I played again, I would definitely play a different class. I don't know. I had a harder time choosing a job than I thought I would. And when I settled on one, I don't know if I loved playing that particular job.
Sure.
So I know we only had a small snippet. And so over time, maybe it would have been better.
That's possible. And you can buy things that are special dice as you gain reward dice. And so you could have rounded out your character a little bit more to be an adventurer or assassin. The Soul Thief does look as though, based on its initial special dice list and everything like that, it is very much going to poke people with.
It's a fighty one. It's the fighty
It's very
one.
fighty, yeah.
And you can also, and Yeld does have a lot of options to where you can change your job within the game pretty easily. So I think that was probably good too.
Yeah.
So if you do feel like it's not the class that you wanted, it seems pretty easy.
That was good game design. Yeah.
Yeah. Mechanically even easy to change.
Yeah.
As for the, what was I, Freelancer? It was fun. I felt a lot more well-rounded than Jeff's character. I felt like my character was appropriate to handle a lot of different situations.
Sure.
Just because that's sort of their thing, was they're the jack of all trades sort of character where they can kind of get around to do anything, which I think is cool. I think that's a cool character class to have. You don't always have those in different role-playing games.
Yeah, their identity was always tied up with it. Like in D&D, there's no, I mean, the jack of all trades is either a rogue or a bard, only because they get a lot of skills, right? Is that
right? Yeah, and none of their actual abilities like support that.
But that gave you the improvisability, and that was kind of a nice way.
Yeah, which you can use that's what I mean, is you can use that ability in anything, like whether we were doing a negotiation, some sort of social challenge, whether we're doing combat, you can just be better at that thing 4 times in a session, which is cool.
Yeah, that was a really cool skill.
Yeah, I liked it quite a bit. I honestly think if I were to play, I would probably look at Freelancer being one of the top picks in terms of class. Although there is a part of me that I do like black mages. I don't know why. There was a many years in my life where I was reading that 8-bit theater or whatever it was, that old Final Fantasy 1 cartoon that was webcomic or whatever, that made me laugh a lot. Sword chucks, wand chucks.
Black mage, yeah.
There's a part of me that would go back to that, and so I think and really I think what you guys are one of the things we mentioned there is that we talk about building out dice pools a little bit with like your skills and how your skills feel in the game. Now, for everybody, when you have a dice pool in Yeld, you basically get to choose a few things to build your dice pool from. You have your core stat, which almost every roll involves a core stat. Then you have your special dice, which are basically dice that are derived from like a skill. So like a see in the dark special dice would allow you to see better in the dark, but also at the same time,
they're more like abilities. I get a little confused. I struggled a little bit with how they decided to use that nomenclature, because they say special dice like it's going to be a dice you add, but then they're kind of tied to a skill like excuse me or dirty fighting, which is more of like an ability. So I found that a little bit confusing at first.
And it can be, and I think that was probably one of the things that I was having a little bit of a hard time parsing with some of those, was the special dice. It's like, well, if it says you can do it, like breathe fire, are you actually breathing fire, or are you just adding fire to something? And so it was like there were some things that I think were just a little bit unclear with that. But the idea is that a special dice is either an ability that allows you to do something, like fly allows you to, get over stuff in combat without a roll, or if there is an option to roll, you roll +1 special dice because of your fly,
or whatever the rank is in the ability.
Yeah, or whatever the rank you have in it. So you get to add your special dice to your core dice, and then you get to add what are called borrowed dice. Borrowed dice come from equipment or any other source that adds dice. For example, Brent had a flashlight that gave him the special dice, see in the dark whenever he was holding it. Obviously, allowing him to use a flashlight allowed him to see in the dark.
Sure.
But just how it represents is it gives you a special dice instead of the ability to see in the dark. So how did you guys feel that kind of mechanic of building your dice pool worked out for you? Did you like it? It sounds like, Brent, you had a little bit of, like, the special dice was probably the most complicated part.
I mean, the naming convention was the problem, not the pool building. I mean, pool building is pretty common in like, I mean, Vaesen and the Mutant Zero Engine does that. Shadowrun does that to a degree. So the dice pool system was fine with. I think it's cool. I think I like somebody said in one of the comments, I think 6-sided dice pools are nice, just because like everybody understands it. You don't have to have that moment where it's like, okay, roll the 12-sided dice, and somebody's like, oh, which one is that? Is it this one? Oh no, that's the 8-sided dice. Look for the other one with more sides than 6. Less than 12. Like you don't have that necessarily, that whole thing. And so it's just like, yeah, just roll the number of 6s that you build from these 2 things. And I think that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, it was also, and I mean, some other aspects of the game that we didn't necessarily go into as much is that it seems as though they tried to make it as easy for people to play as possible, knowing that other games you may have in your house should have 6-sided dice if they have any dice at all. Very rarely do you open up a board game and it goes, well, we've got a bunch of D4s in this sucker. So
yeah, people usually have D6 dice. D6s.
Yeah.
It's common. It's more common than any other dice kind. And then of course the battle map that they have is basically a chessboard or checkered board. I think the checkerboard's the same. You can use one of those as your battle maps to kind of like represent where you are tactically. So I mean, those are very easy and inexpensive ways to add physical components to it and dice without really very much effort, which I thought was very, very smart for them to introduce somebody without having to go into like Warhammer level miniature buying. And
you mean Fantasy Flight Games punching out cardboard tokens for 87 hours while you're trying to play their role-playing game? Yeah. Standees and tokens and
standees, tokens, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. It's true. What about you, Jeff? How did you like the mechanics, the dice pool?
I like the dice pool. I like dice pool games. I will say this. I don't think I rolled a single just 1d6, which I think is nice. There's some dice pool games where it's like, why do I even have a dice pool if my dice pool is 1 die? Like, and I get that there are times where there's negative stuff, but it doesn't feel very great. But I did like using the dice pool. I had one other thing that confused me a bit, like the borrowing a die from your weapons or armor. It's like, well, if I don't use it now, when am I going to use it? The borrowing term, I would have just said, and you get an additional die,
if you
based
use
on
an
the
item
label of your armor or your weapon, if you're using them as part of the attack or defense.
Yeah, some of the verbiage was weird because borrowed implies that you can't use it later.
Using it now instead of another time,
which most of the items didn't just burn out after one use, right?
Right.
But the borrowed only applied if the item was in your hands and not in your inventory. So that was one thing that was really important. Like your flashlight, just by having your flashlight on you, didn't allow you to borrow the See in the Dark dice. You had to be in your hand with the flashlight to use that. If I know that's kind of
that makes sense
specific, but that's really where the borrowing come from. Is that it's only applicable?
But I mean, that's a weird. I don't know. For somebody experienced with games, it's a weird context to have to clarify because it's like saying, well, if you're not, it's like playing D&D and saying, well, if you aren't using your +1 sword, you're not getting that +1. Like that's just intrinsic to the item. Like if you're not using the item, you can't use the bonus.
Right.
So that was a weird.
I think they were trying to hedge off all those really clever people that were just like, well, if it's considered equipped, then so they'd like strap a flashlight to their head. They have arms on their arms are covered in mantis blades, like in Cyberpunk.
No, that's a possibility. I found it slightly confusing, but
that's fair.
I did like the dice pool. I didn't mind the challenges. I didn't mind the combat. I thought they were fine. So yeah.
So did you guys, and so there were a lot of mechanics that I don't think we got to explore as much. First of all, because I designed an encounter that was far too easy for these guys. I didn't get to kill one of you and have ghost time. But did you either read about or see a mechanic that you really liked about the game? Or
I think the ghost mechanic for a fantasy game was interesting. The fact that your character, even though they're down, could interact with what's going on in the combat still. I think that was interesting to me.
I thought it was neat. I would have liked to seen it in practice, but from what I read, it seems very interesting.
And I did enjoy knowing that that a person on fire gives off the same amount of light as somebody holding a torch. I did enjoy learning that in the book.
That was odd. I mean, true, but odd.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it was just something that it really stuck with Brent as he was reading it. He was like, so you're just basically starting all these people on fire.
Well,
And
it's because I hardly it's because I have in my mind I picture somebody on fire standing there going, "Oh, I see pretty good right now," not just running around screaming.
No, I see their friends, Jeff, going, can you just stand there for a second?
Yeah.
And finally make out what's on the back wall. Hang on, don't move.
Yeah, exactly.
don't move.
I liked the idea of was it the chains that they had? But I still would argue that it implies that like you want a party larger than 2 since you can't have a chain until you get to 3. I'm not saying you can't. Obviously, we played it with 2, and I had a fine time. But I would that mechanic you can't explore with 2, and you probably can't explore it very often with 3 because the monsters are probably interrupting before you can get the 3rd one off, or trying to interrupt.
It's based on your success. So even if the monsters interrupt, because monsters and heroes or friends get to do chains, so monster chains are a thing. So if there was a ton of monsters, it really could turn into a whose side has more.
That's true. No, it could be abused.
That makes that mechanic even worse because that means that a 2-party is going to get out action.
Yeah, if we'd have fought 4 monsters and they'd have gotten to go 4 times in a row and hit every time and chain, we would have been in serious trouble.
Yeah, that makes that mechanic even rougher for smaller groups.
I think it sounds like a neat mechanic, but I do think it means that you want, in my mind, 5 or 6 characters in the party, which I don't know is always easy to get.
Yeah,
you need a gaggle of kids.
A gaggle of people playing kids.
You need a gaggle of people playing kids to fight off monsters.
Yes,
that's probably the.
And I think you could break the chain if a monster went in between people. It wasn't whether or not you were successful. If a monster went in between people, it broke the chain. If I remember, at least that's what I thought I read.
Action chain.
I thought it did.
So action chain continues. So the action chain continues as long as a friend is able to make a successful action. The action chain breaks if a friend fails their action, takes an action that cannot result in a successful, or if a monster interrupts the chain. You're right. Yeah. So,
excuse me. So that excuse me ability becomes ridiculously powerful.
Super powerful.
So the action chain stops if a friend chooses a monster to take the next turn, but does not break. It's an interesting verbiage. We'll have to explore that another time. But needless to say, I think you're right. I think that having some mechanics like that don't really have smaller party compatibility, it just it can be a little bit tricky because it is a cool idea that you guys build up momentum. The more successful your side is, you start to push the other side back, and vice versa. I think that's a cool way that those can be handled. But obviously, because we only played with 2 people, we didn't really get to see what that was. And of course, as one other thing about ghosts, if you like, the thing that was also interesting is that you can kind of be foolhardy. Is that the right way to put it? Because your party doesn't necessarily have, like, dying in D&D is like, oh well, unless your DM wants to take you to like the 9 hells and you fight your way out of the 9 hells. I know that's a trope where if your TPK happens and that, they can kind of fight their way back to the land of the living. But a lot of times, your character is lost and those kind of things when you die. Whereas in this, if your entire party wipes, you basically go back to the last place you're in. You're in. So I thought that was kind of a nice way for you to be like, oh, well, I made a mistake and we did something that we shouldn't have, or we had really bad luck.
I thought one of you had to be alive for that.
No.
Weird.
Yeah, like if one of you is alive, then you can make your restore roll and come back as a ghost. But if the party wipes, effectively, you just go back to your.
Oh, you have a save state.
Basically, I think if my memory serves, it was like the last inn you paid money to stay at. I don't know if that requires, but I believe it said last.
I don't mind having a save mechanic. I know some people would.
Wait, your soul is obliterated if you got a free room? Is that what you're saying?
No, it just goes to the last.
Don't accept a free room.
Never accept a free room in Yeld.
because it's definitely something that works for the big bad.
Definitely never accept multiple free rooms. Jesus.
Yeah. So the one thing that I liked that we didn't really get to explore because neither one of you were really casting spells was that there is a magical backfire rule that I thought would have been really fun to do, because it's anytime a friend or a monster rolls 2 or more ones when successfully casting a spell, their spell backfires. And then of course this gets into the whole like when wild magic was a thing for me back in D&D. I loved wild magic misfires just because of how unpredictable they were to the whole situation. I know that wild magic and kenders and some other mechanics are just like DM grown moments, but this could have been a lot of fun to kind of
I'm glad I didn't play Magic User. I hate that stuff.
Well, and like this one, like you can get, so you have
I mean, chances of rolling at 2 1s are very high
for you.
The more with 6-sided dice, it's surprisingly high.
It's math. And just the more dice you roll,
go back and look at the dice roller, we each at least rolled 2 1s.
Well, and then that's the nature of the dice, though. Is like if you roll 6 dice, you're just as likely to roll 1 1 as you are 1 6.
Exactly.
So I mean, like the more dice you roll, the more likely that is going to happen.
I could see like going, no, I don't want that 4th dice in the pool.
Yeah, so the more powerful your magic user gets in Yeld, the more likely they are for their spells to just do something wacky. Eventually. So
well, but I mean they're kind of funny little disasters, because like a minor magical backfire is 1 backfire since last paying coins, and one of them is like treasure swap. And the thing is like, why is your stuff all sticky? Effect: swap held gear and weapons with a random friend or monster on the action board. It's just silly. But then
so the monster gets a broom and you get a 2-handed battle axe. Let's go.
It said you switch it with your friends, isn't it? Or is
friends
it
or monsters?
Friends or monsters.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it goes all the way up to legendary. Magical disasters, basically 3 backfires since last sleeping at an inn. I'm sure you could probably like coax that somehow, but obviously getting all the way up to legendary would be a lot of fun in my opinion. But that's just me and my love of those random tables.
Yeah.
So in essence, I mean, the mechanics themselves felt pretty easy and light. Obviously there were some challenges, it sounds like, getting kind of to wrap your head around the idea of special dice and borrowing them a little bit, but I don't think that's not insurmountable. I think it would be pretty easy after you practiced and understood
it's just a matter of learning the vocabulary of the book, because that's very like I said, instead of calling them special dice instead of special skills or talents or something like that, just took a little bit of getting used to.
Now, and I guess since this is kind of a storytelling game, do you feel the mechanics presented themselves in a way that supported telling those stories?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
There wasn't, the abilities all gave you an idea of what the abilities were all named something that, like Jeff said, were kind of on the lighter side. So that reinforces that ability that you're playing kids. It's a Narnia sort of thing. And I think the rules, the simplicity of the rules and the naming conventions and stuff, I feel like supported that.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually thought, like, when you sat down and you looked at the skills and you like used the name when you were using them, I thought it helped me build or better understand the concept of my character and like who they were. And if we played multiple sessions, progressed a few levels,
sure,
got additional stuff, I think I would have felt like there was some growth in the character, not just numbers and stats, but the character itself would have been developing as I added new skills and stuff. And so I actually thought it was conducive for that.
Good. Yeah. I mean, honestly, the things that I think the mechanics really did a good job being able to tell a Yeld story. And of course, the one thing that I thought was a clever use of skills was the way that they broke down their skills into skill challenge, effort challenges, and heroic challenges to basically say, well, unlike in D&E, where very much is a binary type deal. Like D&D, at least, I haven't played D&D in a while, but when it was 5th edition and all that stuff, it felt more like it was an either or. Either you succeeded at your check or you didn't succeed at your check. There wasn't really
there's no scale. There's no scale. There's no scale of success or failure in D&D.
And sometimes there is, like, in terms of like, you rolled an Arcana check, you rolled a 10, well, you learn X. 12 is this, whereas on a skill check, like an athletics check, doesn't really.
I think that's a house rule, though. I don't think that's technically in the book.
There are some adventures that use those types of tables.
But I don't think it's in the core. I don't think it's a core rule. Like I said, I think it's a house rule for different adventures and stuff.
But I liked how and I think it's good for kids to have that kind of mentality that if you have a skill challenge, sure, that could be a binary type deal, but you could also have an effort challenge where you succeed no matter what. And much like in our mothership games where you still are successful, but you pay a cost. And I think having that component to kind of say, okay, well, you still do whatever you wanted to do. You just pay a cost to get to it is better. It's better thinking in terms of role playing. So you're not always like, I think that term soft locking, you're just like, oh, I hid the clue behind a roll and you didn't make it. Campaign over. Right. Or checks and all that stuff. And then having a heroic check where you don't do it, but you also pay something is kind of like a nice gradient between the three. Because I did feel like there was one thing that it suggested in the game is that because you fail, you go back to the inn as ghosts, is recognizing when is the right time to approach a problem. Like you have the right resources, the means, and the ability to achieve your goal. If you failed at it, you get to kind of lick your wounds and go back, as opposed to other games where it's like, well, TPK, what level 1 party and what tavern do you want to meet at? So I like those things. So I think that in terms of like the storytelling part of it, now the way that Yeld is a little bit different than most of the other RPGs that you run into is that it has a story that's kind of baked into the game. And that is that you arrive at the magical land, you explore, eventually the door between the two worlds is closed, and you need to defeat 7 hunters to get their magical keys to open that door back up with an optional boss at the end if you want to fight the vampire prince. What did you guys think about the whole idea of the meta plot, how it told the story of the game?
I mean, a lot of games have a meta plot. I think the meta plot in this game was very actionable. Like it was very easy it was a very easy thing to work into games because it was very goal oriented on you're in Yeld, your goal is to get out of Yeld or you will turn into a monster. And I think that's what makes the meta plot good in this sense is that it's you can add it to adventures easily and it be something that drives your adventures versus a lot of times the meta plot is like Dark Sun has the meta plot of like the Sorcerer Kings and everything, but you don't ever really interact with that necessarily because it's too dangerous. Whereas this, you're directly interacting with the meta plot.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point. What about you, Jeff? Having the idea of the hunters, the keys, the door, the prince.
I like what Brent said, that it was actionable. It's understandable. Like it may not be easy to find these people, but you know what you have to do once you get there. I've played in a few games where the meta plot's really vague, and that's kind of awful. You wind up wandering the desert for 40 years trying to figure out what you should do next. I do feel like I've heard this meta plot before or something similar. That doesn't make it bad. It just makes it maybe a little borrowed, which is fine. So I thought it was good. I will say this, like where my character was 12 years old and I had a year, like finding these 7 lieutenants felt like we had a lot to do in a short amount of time.
Right. And with a bigger party, that's probably going to happen. Like you're probably going to have kids closer to that year.
Somebody who's under the gun.
Yeah, which is going to push that meta plot. And I think that's what I mean is like a lot of times, I mean, you either have a vague meta plot sometimes or you have a very specific meta plot that just gets in the way. Like you have a very specific meta plot that's like, well, why aren't we dealing with this meta plot? Why are we doing this other thing instead? And like, and that kind of, it's because that's what we're trying to do this for whatever, but this doesn't really work towards the meta plot. But okay, let's go do this thing. Whereas in this case, like you can easily steer everything kind of towards that meta plot, I feel, which I think is
Sure.
an interesting take on the game. There's really good some really good aspects of the game.
Sure. Yeah, I thought that I personally thought that it was a good concise thing. And as you said, Jeff, I think, I've heard similar type deals, gather keys, open a door. I'm not saying like, oh no, somebody's already done that. What I'm saying is that it's a clever way to make it easy enough to, so it's just 7 keys. It's not 7 really weird, ill-defined MacGuffins.
Right.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
it's easy to write an episodic thing about. Like, I mean, it
Mhm.
essentially kind of like I said when we started, like the plot of the old D&D Saturday morning cartoon was
Mhm.
essentially, oh, we need to get out of this world. We need to find the doorway back home. So yeah, it is a common like plot, but it's a fairly good one, and you can write things around it fairly easily, which again, kind of the goal of Yeld, I think, like you said, is to make the game easy to play. And so it has a meta plot that's easy to make adventures for.
Yeah.
Good point.
And truthfully, unless I was, kind of in a dream thing, I thought the adventure I built was built based on the lore of Yeld. And I think having the idea of kind of connecting the players with mentors makes it easy for the DM to have a talking head that is a story point and not make it feel like just weird meta knowledge is kind of being exchanged over. I thought the idea that, you could use as much or as little of the lore as you wanted really makes it easy and accessible. So you don't have to get bogged down in all these details if you don't want to. You can kind of take it in whatever direction you want. But there was a rich enough world that had lots of interesting food options. If you really got into the items and stuff, there was a lot of really neat food that they were running around with. But there was a lot that you could borrow from. And like the adventure that I did, I went with the serpent, children of the serpent, or whatever it was, because it was Croesus, the Oracle tunnels, because apparently there was a crisscrossing network of tunnels. I think that, it was easy to add those things to a game and just kind of pick and choose and say like, well, it never really said there wasn't this type of thing. So now there is.
Yeah, no, it's good that they had points like that in the lore, the stuff that you could use as building blocks.
Kind of your food point. I did find it weird that there's certain things that definitely seem to be they became kind of obsessed with when writing the book. Like the food, lighting people on fire seemed to be one that came up way more often than I'm used to in most games.
Sure.
Because like the witch hunter was like had 2 special abilities. One was like to light people on fire, and then the other one was things they could do when they were on fire. And then there's the torch fire thing, and then there was a gun in the book that lit.
Couldn't they also set their teammates on fire if you had magic users?
I think the black mage had an ability that could set things on fire.
Okay,
fire
I
hat.
just thought there was I remember a friendly fire ability if you had to
there's something about lighting someone on fire. I'm not surprised if it's in this game because they seemed weird. It came up weirdly a lot, in my opinion. Which I guess that's a flavor of a sort. But it was just funny how it came up so often.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I mean, we played Yeld. I think if we looked at our one shot, we pretty much had the option to say, okay, I left it open. You could easily go use that as a leaping off point into going to hunt the dragon Croesus if you wanted. But in terms of mechanics, story, playtime, and let's say we were at our home table, would you play Yeld again?
I would play Yeld again. I don't know that I would play it over some other systems, but if somebody had a story they really wanted to tell and wanted to run it, I would definitely play Yeld again.
I would probably give it another shot. I'm a little hesitant because I have a lot of problems with the game. Not from the sense that anything is super negative, just me personally. Like playing kids doesn't. I'm not super interested in that sort of thing. And I think the game tonally for me has some weird. There's some weird tonal shifts in the game that are a little strange for me. So I enjoyed it. I would probably play it again, but I might not play it for long, if that makes sense. And I would never be in. I wouldn't run it. I would. There's things that I would definitely steal out of this game to run in another game, though.
That's fair. Yeah, I have to say, personally, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the concepts that were introduced. I enjoyed the way that they brought the storytelling to the forefront, and I liked that it was easy. It was in some ways easy in a way that I kind of felt like I was missing something. Where you're like, is it really that easy to do it that way? Okay. That's kind of something that happens.
Would you want to play the game though? Because you and historically have not been that interested in games, so you play kids on bikes or
no,
Tales from the Loop or those.
I would say I would probably have more fun running the game, and this would be a game that, as my kid gets older, it's something I could put on the shelf and say, you know what, we can play this game. Obviously, depending on his maturity level and what he likes out of it, I can go as grim or as dark as I need to. Probably start off, with him trying to capture monsters instead of, all those kind of things. But I don't know. I liked creating in the world of Yeld, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, I think that was, once I wrapped my head around the world a little bit more, because I did have a little bit of trouble like formulating some of the stuff for our little short adventure, just because I was like, well, what should I do? I put a lot of pressure on myself for it. But once I kind of figured out what I wanted, it was easier, and I could easily see kind of the dotted line and how it could go to each of the hunters a lot more easily. And I think it would be a pretty substantial campaign.
Honestly. The meta plot works well for building stories. Like they did make a meta plot in a world that's, I feel like you could build stories in fairly easily. Do I think necessarily that Yeld? I guess here's my bottom take on Yeld and the stories is I'm not sure why they made a decision that has to be kids. I'm not sure why that happened, because I'm not sure why that decision was made, because I think you could have a similar story and it not have to be kids. Yeah. Like you could change when you turn 12, you become a monster.
Could you make it 18 and then play with teenagers? Would that change the game for you at all? Or
no, I don't. Well, yeah, it would, because being a little bit more mature, I think, is what I would rather. But I'm saying that you could play it with regulars and say if you spend 2 years in Yeld, you turn into a monster.
You could, sure.
Like you could just do that.
Just start off with the same clock on everybody's head.
Yeah, there's decisions that were made in the production of the book that I'm curious as to why they were made. Like deciding to make it kids, maybe they wanted it more leaning towards kids, running a game for kids. But I can kind of see that in areas. But then there's weird things in the book that stand out as, oh, this isn't for kids. For example, like there's a gun. Like we talked about this before. There's a gun in the book, and it says clearly that kids can't have guns. Cool. But kids can be shot by guns? That seems a little weird to me still. And I know the gun just sets them on fire, which might be a benefit in some cases, but it's still kind of weird to me that it makes that distinction. Is why put them in there at all if your player characters can't use them. And I know why they say kids shouldn't use guns. Like I get it, but I'm just saying it just seems weird that they made that. Like there's just some decisions in it that I don't understand tonally what they were going for, and I think they were curious decisions, because I think as adults playing a game where you're kids, I think you either play it as close to kids as you can, or what you think kids act like, or it just kind of gets ignored and put in the background.
You just kind of play as
you play it the way you would any character that way.
Yeah,
it's just when somebody asks your age in the game, you go 12,
10. And part of that is because I don't know how 10-year-old so and so would act. The impetuous reaction of throwing the cup, I felt was kid-like, because an adult necessarily wouldn't do that. Great. But like those moments, like you could probably pick out those moments and make it feel very kid-like, I guess. But I don't know. There's just, like I said, there's just some weird tonal whiplash for me. Where it's like, oh, this is abnormally violent. Like for example, one of the things that I think also stood out was there's definite benefits to killing a monster over befriending a monster, mechanically. And I think that was a weird choice, because the benefit is always going to lean towards like, oh, you get all their stuff if you kill them. You
Yeah.
don't get anything if you make friends with them.
Well, yeah, because you're not gonna steal your friend's stuff. The one thing I would point out, to go back to the earlier point about what I would play in, is that if there was a hard mode, let's call it, I don't know, where you basically everyone started as
Infants, that would be harder.
Fuck you. No, but if you went down the monster job route and basically you said, okay, well, you don't get to leave Yeld if you get all 7 keys, but you can leave Yeld if you kill, subdue, take out the vampire prince, whatever you want to call it. That's the key for those people that are otherworlders that want to go back home, is they actually have to take out the prince effectively. I think that would be like a similar, like that version of the game I would be much more interested in. But instead of the normal jobs, you have your monster jobs or whatever.
So that was another thing. So speaking of killing monsters and stuff, that was another thing that weirded me out a little bit. Is in the book, it specifically says that only outsiders in Yeld go to the Ghost Realm and return. So that means anybody else in Yeld that dies just dies.
Well,
which
I
think
pass through, I think, is the point. They just go down the funnel.
They're dead, Mike. They're dead. They don't come back like you do.
Yeah, I agree with Brent. Yeah,
and I think it's a little weird because like if you think about being a kid in this world, and it's like, well, I just come back at the tavern. Why wouldn't you just think you could kill everything? Like I just come back. Like as a kid, like as a character, I mean, as the kid is, on some level that you come back like, oh, I died and then came back. Your character is aware of that. Mm-hmm. So it would be hard to not be able to justify it in character to say, oh, we just killed them because they'll just come back later. They just lose their stuff or whatever. Like, and I think that was a weird, that struck me as a like, it's just struck me as a little weird.
Fair enough. It kind of like
I would totally play a soul thief in that game that was like 8 years old and is like, oh yeah, I'll just stab him. He'll just come back somewhere. He'll just come back at the next inn he stayed in. And then people be like, that doesn't happen with other people.
Oh, heroes.
Well, why not?
Yeah, I could see that. There was an anime that I watched. It was called ReZero, I think. It's been many years since I saw it, but like it has that same kind of like, there was the main character in that, basically he could advance the story until he died, then it rewound to a certain point. And so it's when you were like watching, you're like, well, what exactly is the point? And then you get to this like brutal death that he suffers, and he's like, oh, well, that sucks. And then all of a sudden, like everything changed about the anime at that point, because all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's the stick. Oh, that sucks. And then he kind of goes to that whole Groundhog Day of trying to like understand how he can like overcome this obstacle. But it was a very emotionally, it changes, like it changes the tone, it changes everything. Sure. And to your point,
it would make a very dramatic moment for a character to realize.
Yeah.
Oh no, people don't actually come back when I stab them in the face. Like when I get stabbed in the face, yeah, that would be interesting.
I thought they just exploded into coins, like
exactly,
like Scott Pilgrim.
I just thought they respawned later somewhere else.
The 7 evil X's turn into money.
Yeah, bus fare.
It just felt weird because it means that the characters have a weird interpretation of consequences in Yeld, I guess, is the way I feel about it. Like, because there's no consequences when we screw up and we die as player characters. So, I mean, no real consequences.
You have to reload and retread a little bit.
Other than
there's light consequences.
Oh yeah, there's consequences, but they're walking consequences.
Yeah.
True. You don't get to do this anymore. Consequences.
They're not pondering it forever in the afterlife.
Yeah,
I get it.
Which I thought that was just totally a little weird to me too. But I mean, how else are you gonna do it? Like,
I don't know. I mean, I get it. You bring up some good points. I think that in terms of like I said, I thought it was a neat mechanic to introduce to.
Yeah, the death thing was really a neat mechanic. Yeah. And I could see, like, if I was using it in a different game, I guess is my point, is like I would have your character as a ghost, but then the players would have to do something to make them come back, and I would still say if the entire party wiped like no one's there to do these things for you, so you don't get to come back.
So as long as one of you escapes the danger, then you can bring everybody back.
Yeah, they can do the 7 trials
Stone and push the buttons.
Yeah, they can do the
second we
7 trials.
encounter an enemy, the fastest person starts booking it in the opposite direction.
Yeah, exactly. I would accept that.
there is one of us is
come back 2 days later to check out things.
Or you have a family like most adventuring parties don't, that might want you to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's some good stuff. So, okay. Well, I mean, in terms of games, it sounded like at least we had fun while we played it.
It did have fun. It was fun.
I had fun.
Yeah. So I don't want to sound like we're harping on the game. It was just we're without information. So if the creators want to let us know what their thoughts.
No, I obviously had more problems than you guys did, and I still had fun. So
yeah, good game. I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
and we didn't even we were barely chipping the surface. So, alrighty. So with that, I thank everybody for making it to this point. If you want to pick up the Magical Land of Yeld, we'll include the link to Yeld stuff in the show notes and all that, so you can check it out yourself. I believe they have the first edition download for free. I'll have to double check.
What is the name of the company that it's published under?
I think on Drive-Thru RPG is Adarashi Games, but it seems as though when I look at the book, it's just Yeld.
Okay.
So
just in case anybody wants to search for it instead of using the link.
Yeah, if somebody wants to get more information, do some research on their own.
Yeah, just look up Yeld stuff. That's the YELD stuff.
I think you want to look at the Magical Land of Yeld because I
think that's the website, Yeld stuff. Like that.
Literally Yeld stuff?
Yeah.
And Brent's going to check it out now.
Like I'm over here just spitting truth.
It is. Well, I think making that clarification that www.yeld stuff is different than saying just look up Yeld stuff, because Yeld stuff could be us not remembering a bunch of things.
Yeah, that's true.
Go look up D&D stuff if you like D&D stuff, as we have been known to say about other games.
We have said things like that, I think.
I know
that's a fair concern.
I know I have, at least. By being Yeld stuff threw me for a loop. Very much so.
It's true. That definitely is a filler word from Mike to say, like, oh, just look up Yeld stuff. Well, maybe I'm these people are closer to me than I thought. Stuff, Yeld stuff.
Yeld stuff.
That's
good. Well. I never even noticed that was the name of the website. That's funny.
And I'm over here like, it's just Yeld stuff. And you're like, Mike, it's got to be more descriptive than stuff.
What?
Yeah.
Screw you guys. So, yes. So we appreciate you getting all the way to the end of the video. We'll include the links, or you can just go to Yeld stuff. That's fine.
Literally Yeld stuff.
Boomerang back. And so if you want to leave us a comment, your experiences with the Magical Land of Yeld, your thoughts, all those kind of things, hit us below. We like to chat with the people, so come say hi. And Jeff, do you want to tell people how they could reach us outside of YouTube?
Yeah, you can find us on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter. We are at Rollwise. You can also email us, rollwiseguys@gmail.com.
And as always, thank you for joining us. We'll be looking for the website address, rollwisestuff.com anytime now. But again, thank you for being here. Roll well, roll wise, and be safe out there, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.